Well, if you think of critical thinking or critical reasoning, um, in a certain respect, it is just philosophy. A philosophy from the beginning, and if I say the beginning, I guess I mean Socrates was seen as a way of waking people up. Socrates, in his defense speech before the jury, when he was accused of corrupting the youth of Athens, said that he was a gadfly, that he was a fly that stung the great beast of Athens to wake it up, that Athens was this great horse that was lazy, and Socrates stung it occasionally to wake it up. Russell is very much that sort of figure. Um, Critical thinking is really just thinking about the basis of belief, the basis of what we presume or what we think might be true about the world. Um, and asking ourselves whether we have a rational basis for the things that we believe. Well, of course, we have other bases too. I mean, that is, the causes of our beliefs are not always rational. This, I say here, dreams and facts. It's really about the other ways in which belief is formed, besides rational evaluation of the likelihood of the belief. And the two big words here are wishes and desires. And Russell paints a rather, I don't know, a rather depressing picture of human beings and their capacity to actually form their beliefs on the basis of evidence rather than wish or desire. He has this great line here in the beginning where he says, "Man is essentially a dreamer, wakened sometimes for a moment by some peculiarly obtrusive element in the outer world, but lapsing again quickly into the happy somnolence of imagination." Well, of course, philosophy is supposed to, again, wake us up out of the sleep that Socrates said that we are normally in. Um, but how is it possible? I mean, how far is it possible to do that? He has this great line here on page 28 in the second paragraph where he says, "Every man, wherever he goes, is encompassed by a cloud of comforting convictions, which move with him like flies on a summer day." That is, we all sort of carry around our fog, and that fog consists of comforting convictions. Those things that we believe to be true, not because they necessarily are true, but because they make us feel good about ourselves. And as he says, these convictions, some of them are about ourselves individually. Some of them are about our family and our group, our social group, like the country we're from or the community we belong to. And some are comforting convictions about human beings in general. And so on page 29, he says we have thus a hierarchy of comforting beliefs: those private to the individual, those which he shares with his family, those common to his class or his nation, and finally those that are equally delightful to all mankind. And this is a very interesting thing about good manners or politeness. Is just not disturbing somebody's delusions about themselves or their country, um, or even about mankind in general. But okay, but what is Russell saying? Well, that's just the way it is. People are deluded. I mean, they carry the convictions that they have are not based upon evidence. They're based upon being propped up as an individual, as a country, or as a citizen of a country, as a member of the human species. Well, he says something interesting on page 30. But the results of failure in politeness that is, respecting people's delusions, basically, however bad from the point of view of a social occasion or admirable from the point of view of dispelling myths. Okay, so Russell does think that we can, if we think so we can dispel myths, well, the myths are the comforting convictions, right? So we should be able to dispel them. There are two ways in which our natural beliefs are corrected. One, the contact with fact, as when we mistake a poisonous fungus for a mushroom and suffer pain and consequence. The other, when our beliefs conflict, not directly with objective fact, but with the opposite beliefs of other men. That is, there are ways in which we can actually correct our beliefs. One is by coming into contact with fact about the world. The other is when we realize that other people do things differently from us and that the way that we think about ourselves and the customs that we have are not universal. So we're enlightened in that way when we see diversity. But I suppose there are ways, Russell thinks, that we can dispel the myths about ourselves. He says, step by step, relations with other human beings dispel the myths of all but the most successful. Personal conceit is dispelled by brothers, family conceit by schoolfellows, class conceit by politics, national conceit by defeat in war, commerce. But human conceit, that is, conceit about the human species, remains. And in this region, so far as the effect of social intercourse is concerned, the myth making faculty has free play. Against this form of delusion, a partial corrective is found in science. But the corrective can never be more than partial, for without some credulity, science itself would crumble and collapse. Well, okay, so I guess the reason that I paired this with the reading from What I Believe, the first part of it, Nature and Man, it looks like I missed it there, is that in that part of What I Believe, Russell sets out what he believes, the basic beliefs about nature, basically, and our place in nature. One of the questions I asked you in the study questions is well, what about Russell's beliefs? Are they any more than the cloud of comforting convictions that he's carrying around with him? I mean, we all have beliefs. Well, here are some of Russell's. Are Russell's beliefs better than the average person's? I mean, in terms of being more rational, in terms of being more truthful, in terms of being more honest, in terms of being based upon evidence and reason rather than what is comforting. That's what I'd like to know.